Alright, welcome to the stream. In the journey that I want to make my games production ready. And in the stream I'm just going to tackle all the things which is currently not really production ready. And there are a few things that still needs to be done, like refactor the render pipeline, a simple UI system, the central way to configure key bindings, video resolution within the game. And the primary goal is to have at least the games for you guys to download at the end of the year. But in next year I will make sure that I am able to provide them on itch.io, and then I will make a bigger game around it, around the arcade games that I created, and then I will publish it on Steam, and that's currently the primary goal for it. In the previous stream, we have tackled the add component support for game objects, and then in the now we're going to refactor the render pipeline. So yet again, it will be a refactor show probably, but now you're probably going to ask, what is the issue? Well, let me show it to you. Let me fire up my utility. And if I am here loading my diagram for the renderer, then you can see we have the game host, and then it's calling the render service. Then it's going to trigger the render target system. We will call the camera, which is basically the world camera. We're going to render the game objects. Then we're going to post-process everything related on that regard. Then we start the UI camera. And then we render everything related to the UI. And then we are basically doing the final post-processing. But the problem here is that also, if I am now scrolling, no, I don't have the issue here. But the problem is that currently everything is getting concatenated in one big string, basically. No, not a string, in a texture. And where is currently the issue is that we really like to have each camera in its own render target, and then just everything, let's combine everything together. So then we have at least ways to, for example, do local multiplayer with split screen and those kind of things that will basically enable things to make sure that which will be done after this refactor. Which basically means is that we have, first we need to make sure that we have, and the way that I want to solve this is that I want to have an iRender target first, then a camera, and then each game object can register itself towards to the renderer. So that's the way that I wanted to solve it. But no further ado, and also feel free to ask any questions or things that you did. For example, yesterday I didn't do anything related to game development because there was a big release on Netflix yesterday. So, and that was eating up all my and that was more important than, in my opinion, than my gaming engine for that time, which was, of course, I know if you kind of guess it, but it's Stranger Things. No worries. If you still want to watch it, then I'm not going to spoil anything, but I really liked it. All right. So, first thing that we want to do is, because we have here the pixel perfect render target, and funny enough, if you look at my render strategy, we have two inheritors. The basic screen renderer that doesn't even have any post-processing and such a thing. So, what I really liked to solve here is that currently the post-processing is just baked in this render target. And this is something that is itching me from the start. Just a small reminder, the reason why here and there my code is not that clean is because I built this engine for my Halloween project first, and I think I finished the whole game engine, including 4 games and a web-based game, in 2.5 months. So yes, there are some groom marks here and there, which is so it's now the time to make sure that everything is correct, more cleanly implemented. But it's a bit of a challenge because the render target, the post-processing is not an easy one, because it's going to swap the textures every time, which is not ideal. But let's see. We have post-processing here, so we're going to first make sure that this part is just gone, and we can move it to to its own renderer, basically. That's the current goal. And let's see how far we can go with that. And then there are also other things that needs to be improved. But for first, let's make sure that the render pipeline, the post-processing is gone here. Renderer is so we already have all kinds of. The nice thing is that we already have a lot of post-processing processors in here, and you can just register them. But there are also some small things that needs to be done, which I really need to take into account, because it's grown in such a way. So we need to make sure that all those features are also coming in. How are we going to call it? That's of course we're going to call it the processing renderer, right? And in here we have the post-processing renderer. Yes. Okay. So we have something that is called the render texture, which will be a private how we call it, render texture 2D. That's currently a null, and render target 1 and render target 2. And because we're going to do a creative swap on it, and in here we are going to say private bool for the is swapped is false. Then we're going to have a function that we are able to request the first texture, the previous and the second texture. So in here we're going to call render texture 2D, and then no, it's not public, it's private. You idiot. All right. That's the start texture. No, the form texture. Yes. And this will only be a getter. Get turn. Oh, it's already giving the yes. What is it complaining about? Oh, that's right. Dot value and dot value. Yes. And we are sure that this is going to be not null. So that will be no issue on that regard. All right. And then the to texture is from texture is all the way around. Okay. So that's the start. Then we're going to call render texture to the no public start the void start. Then we are going to call render target 2D with an on the one that we really want, right? The current one that we want to render on. Render from. And is this all that? No, because we also need to have a list with an I normal role with the I post processors. Then we can supply a list with which we really like to have. Also, today I'm a bit tired, so it could be that I am probably going to rumble a lot. So if you all right. For each, let's me take a looky how we are doing it now. Should not apply post processor is. Oh, okay. Yeah, but that's so first we want to, of course, going to iterate to it. The post processor if the I know you have things like link in here, so you can also just say where. But for hot loops, I really dislike to use the link statements. And if you, they are very nice. Like you can just say processors dot where, for example, or filter things out in one line. But memory-wise, they are just eating up your how do you call it? Your memory. So that's no real solution, in my opinion. So we're not going to use it, and we're going to filter it here. Turn. All right. Then we need to make sure that swapped is on first. Sounds strange, I know, but is that really the case? Yes, swapped is true. Because we then going to call swapped again in here. I know it sounds a little bit strange, but swapped is swapped. Cool. Because we also need to make sure that the render target 1 is currently set to the render texture 2D. And yes. Is this correct? Let me take a looky again, because what does it do for the apply? We need to set a texture. So yes, so in the apply, we need to have the source and then the target. And I think, yeah, it will be cleaner if we can just, and also way better if we just going to say an texture 2D. Render target, yes. And here, then it's not the source texture. There you go. All right. And then somehow we first need to know the first one, of course, because it first need to pick up the source texture, and then it needs to apply it on the other one. If render target 1 is null, or render target 1 dot value dot texture dot width, it's of course an end, because what I'm now I'm going to check is if the size is different, then we're going to apply it. Which let me make a private function of it, because then it's easier to read. Render texture 2D with a render texture. Yeah. Great. Render texture. Yeah. This will work. Render texture 2D, and then the source. Oh, texture, source, render texture 2D. Yes, the names are long, but I prefer to have them long. If the source renderer is, do we really need to have a +1 on everything? I think we do. Is that really necessary? No, it's not necessary. I think it's more better if we have an texture 2D, yes. And it's the source texture Also render texture to the source target, because we also need to know if it's null or not. This is a bit odd, I know, but if target is null, then we can just return Raylib dot call it create Do we really need to have a +1 and -1? I don't think so. All right. But if the source texture, if the target dot value dot width texture dot width is not source texture dot width and no, in an OR situation is not height, then we're going to unload the texture because we know we have already a texture loaded. And then we're going to make an additional unload texture and the targets. Yes. Then we're going to make it again with the new size. I know it's a duplicate in this case, but otherwise I need to add an additional if statement, which is not really nice. So I think a copy from for this is good enough. All right. So now at least we can just say create render texture with the first the render target 1 and the source texture. And we're going to do the same thing for target 2. There you go. Then otherwise that makes it way easier to read, right? All right. So now is the following step. Now we need to apply it. Should be as simple as this. Then we're just going to say the from texture and the next texture. Oh, to texture. Of yeah. From to is that makes sense. But there is one small thing is that we really also need to know if it's the first one or if it's the first one. Because if it's the first one, then it's because then it need because this one is currently still empty, right? So it's it's kind of like you have an amazing you made an amazing drawing, and then the final checks is just taking it from a blank paper. So that's not what you really want, right? First is false. Yeah, false. And this one, and here it's true. So if it's first, then we simply going to say the source texture, else this one. Make sense? I think so. Uh, the only thing is that um, because after it, do we want to have it back as a render or? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So we're just going to return back the render texture 2D, which get the source texture back, and then you get the render texture back, which makes sense in this case. Because if you really like to have the only the texture inside it, then yeah, well, you can just apply it that way. And we also calling this post-processing, so it will always be after the rendering. Make that, does that make sense? I think that that makes sense. Okay, so oh, good one. Almost make that mistake. Continue. All right. Then here in return, we're going to say the to texture. Yes. Swapped is swapped. Doesn't really matter in which order. Yes, because now it will be called in here. Then we're going to swap, and then the one texture will be this texture. But we do have a small challenge because we also have something which is called post-processing with scene texture. Where is this one get called or set? Okay, interesting. Needs scene texture. Okay. What do I really mean with this? Scene texture as need scene texture, and then we are going to call the source texture in here. I think that's what it really wants. Because here we are setting the load render texture, copy. Yeah, that should be it. Because when we are setting this specific texture, then it's render texture scene copy. And where is this one being set? Render texture final. We are copying it to the texture. Yes, which is good. Yeah. Should be good enough. Swapped. What is it blaming? Sure. All right. Yes. Okay. Now, at least this one is now cleaned up. But now comes the question, does it work? Because the way it should look, just let me run the game as an example. Then you have this CRT shader, you have some bloom effects. And that's basically done by post-processing. The let's see if we can apply it here. Because now it's one big mess. And at first try to turn off post-processing here at all. And make sure that we are only rendering it into a render target. Let's just clean everything up. Is no, yes, that's right. Okay. Render texture 1. Yes, it's going to start here. So we need to have render texture 1, which is valid because otherwise it has nothing to render to. Which is logical, otherwise it will be hard to render to something that doesn't exist, right? We have render texture. Here's the render texture, and good point. It also is mentioning here that it really likes to have everything with a render texture, and the render texture final is okay. Yeah, so this one still needs to be set. So in here we are starting here. Guido. So this will be the actual camera renderer or something. And maybe we can just reuse this logic as the new renderer. And then we can also remove that it's now doing multiple cameras. Then you need to have multiple of those render targets. But let's see. Then it's going to clear. And we have here the post-processing where we are actually doing the post-processing. Sure. Let's clean this one out. End renderer. And then we have the final renderer. Next texture. Where does it do the final renderer? Oh, this is going to be interesting. Yeah, this is exactly my point, because this part is not easy to follow anymore. So that's the reason why I really like to clean this part up so it's easier to follow. I mean, it was working okay, but at a certain point, then you will end up that you don't really have enough, how do you call it, flexibility. And then in my experience, you will always end up that you are stop using it and going to make a new one. We also have the final renderer. But it should render to the final one. No, it's picking up to the final one. But where is it actually? Oh, it's doing it here. Yes. Ah, I'm such an idiot. Yes. All right. For overlap. Where are we setting the final one? That's the screen width. And the screen width is set here in here. Yes. Ah. So I think this is a bit overkill on this place. Then we also need to have, of course, the final renderer. Do we really need to? I think so. Yeah, for in this situation we do. Because let's not try to do too much of a refactoring now. Let's just make sure that the post-processing here is gone. Then you're going to see basically the game without makeup. If that does make sense. The final will be set in here. But do we also clean it up somewhere? Yes, but that's in here. So here we are setting the final one, and this one needs to be ignored. Yes. And renderer. Ah, we have here the part where we doing scene. This is the final one. So without this, it should still work, but it should not have any post-processing anymore. Is that correct? End frame. Nope. We are not going to call end framed here anymore because we are not doing anything with post-processing anymore. Normally, you should say, oh, I really like to have post-processing, and now you are removing everything. Yes. But you can say there is now a reason for it. All right. Let's see if the game still runs. Probably not. High chance that it doesn't work anymore. It still works. It looks like shit, but it still works. Does it still run? Yes. I mean, it's of course it's a personal opinion. There's also a strange offset, but yeah, I personally just really like to have my nice CRT shader back. Yeah, it works. We are not starting the stream just to see me play Pac-Man, right? All right. Now comes the second challenge. We want to have post-processing enabled again. So in here we have swap target, and I have a Git report, Git history, so I can also just remove this, and we have the final post processors. Yes. Render texture 2, which is fine. Let's remove this. Remove this. And this also reminds me that it's important that we are also setting this part. Luckily, we have made it so that we have one function, which is not really true. Target, target, target. Can we not just say target in here? Target is yes. Target is then if target no for target changed, because what I'm now, yeah, I've completely forgot to say what I was doing, but what I am, because we need to set this one, the to make sure that it's on texture filter point, otherwise it won't be crisp. I'm probably going to change this, that you are able to control this, but for now let's just keep it as is. It will be in very easy refactor if needed. Currently, in my opinion, I don't have the requirements to change this, so I'm not going to add it now. Target.value. If target changed, of course, we also need to set it. Target changed is true. Change is true. I don't think we need to have an else statement, because it will never enter in here if this one is correctly set, because it will be exactly the same value. So in that regard, it should still work fine. All right. But imagine that we didn't have this function, then we just need to copy this twice. Yes. So here it comes. Going to do the first processing. It's a bit odd, but we are going to say end texture mode, and we going to say if camera layer is world. Oh yeah, that's true. World, get frame. Oh geez. But also we need to call begin frame. Yeah. But that will be easy, in my opinion. So this will be then not start, but render. And we have public void starts. And this will be a float delta time. And then we are going to also require this enumerable for each. There you go. And then, oh, yeah. Jeez. Begin frame, yes. But which function does it really expose? Because are we now... Oh, we have also end frame, of course. God damn it. And ends. End frame, yes. This one doesn't need it. Is this smart, by the way, or do we really want to have it in one function? Let's first do it like this. Okay, then we need to have the post-processing private post-processing renderer. The post-processing renderer is new, right? All right. Then we want to do a start with all the no, because here it's doing everything regarding to the world, so we will need to render. Yeah, I know now. I know why we are doing it like this. Is that because remember this is something that I did from the beginning, so sometimes I need to reshape my memory a bit for this. Final, the post-processing renderer starts with delta time, and for some reason we are picking it directly from the Raylib here, which is not great. Post processors, and this is why is it not? Oh, of course, idiot. There you go. No. Sure. Like this. Then this one is now called. Now we're going to do the actual render. Okay. Yeah, but we need to know the current renderer as well. So the current renderer, because we are getting the texture back, and that's the one where we're going to render on top of it. Does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense. So the current renderer is post-processing.render, that texture, but where are we calling end? Am I such an idiot and I don't see where we are actually calling end? because it should call it somewhere. The end frame one. End frame. End drawing, end frame. Yes. Well, this is funny because in here we are making a post process where not is base final, but also, huh. So we never called the end frame for, really? That's an, that's funny. That is actually, I think that is a very old bug then, because, and for some reason it always worked. Surprisingly enough. So in here we have the post-processing current render. Then it's going to do the current renderer. Dot. Huh? What's the issue with this? Oh, the dot value. And in here we will make sure that we have the render final dot value, but we should also somewhere, yeah, here we have the actual end renderer, and here we are calculating everything true and true. And then here we are not going to say, then we're going to call the current renderer, because that will be the current target renderer. Then we're going to call the end texture mode. And that way we have the post-processing for that part done. And then it will be loaded into the final renderer. I don't think that we even need a final renderer. Okay. So in here, we can just remove everything here, here, and here. Then we're going to say the post processor renderer, right? Renderer dot starts with the final post processors. Explanation mark. Raylib.getTime. Then we also need to call post-processing renderer. I already see that we probably just need to make the start and end together, because I personally don't see the point of having this like this, but we can see how it's going to behave. Render final. Then the current renderer will be returned back on this one. But if we are doing it like this, then it's keep loading, unloading, loading, unloading, loading, and unloading the texture. I have the feeling that this is going to be interesting situation. So maybe it's better to have a final renderer as well. Render texture final, yes. Current renderer, yes. Yeah, let's just make sure that we're doing that we have the second one as well, because otherwise we keep creating the renderers. So we need to have the final post renderer as well. And in here, we're just going to call the in here, yes. Cool. Then this is done. And in here we are calling end frame. So in the final processors and in the normal, then this bug will also be solved. Or that there's a chance that we may be going to introduce something new. PP, processor, world layer. Okay. Could be that we're now missing maybe some additional filtering, but in my opinion, I don't really care now. Also, I do see that we need to clean up after it. So in that regard, we need to have the final render texture final is not null. And this one needs to be cleaned up as well. And of course, we go away. Oh, I don't want to have AI now. I can take it on my own. All right. Nothing is better than have on the start of the weekend with a nice big refactor. It's something that I always wished on my wish list for starting the weekend. Normal people are just starting with beers and have nice love with friends. No, what I am doing a big refactor, doing it live. But I at least you have some kind of a show that I am doing a small suffering again with refactoring. Maybe I should just change my channel name to the refactor server or something. Maybe. You don't know, right? All right. I'm almost scared that I am. Does this going to work? Is it going to work? It kind of does. Only thing is that I currently don't see the level itself get rendered, which means, and also, ooh, it doesn't clean. All right. Interesting. Why is this happening? Mm, because in here we have end texture mode, but if it's world, then it's going to start the texture mode again with the current renderer. Render texture 1, which is valid. And in here we are begin renderer with post-processing. And here we are starting the render texture. It should be correct. But why does it do this? That's the question. Let me just try something quickly. So in the current renderer with render texture 1. Let me just address it like this. Then we're going to yet again skip that specific part. And let's try it with Cybermaze again, which is my default go-to test subject. Does it work? Yes. Then it does work. Which is strange, by the way, because you should suspect that in the final renderer, it should pick up this part. Because if I'm not doing this, the current renderer final. Which one are the final post-processing and which one are the normal renderers is the question. There you go. So the final ones are the bloom, the Gaussian, and the CRT. And the normal post-processing ones are 0. Oh, that's interesting. If it's 0, yes, that makes sense. If it's 0, then it doesn't do anything, of course. Of course. Then we don't want to call all this logic. Post-processing render, yes, 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 yes. So in that regard, we need to address this. Then we need to make sure that this still works with an texture 2D. Yeah, well, then I'm probably going to change it to a normal render texture, because then we just need to simply return it back. Source texture dot texture. Yes. Texture. Oh, yeah, of course. We need to set it in here as well. Okay. So in here, because we have the current is dot count is 0, then we're going to return just directly the source texture, because there is no point to do any rendering or logic if there's nothing to do, right? Downside is that we always need to apply a render texture to it. But yeah, I don't think that will be a really big issue, because yeah, it will always gather all the information, and that way it will just work in the end. But does this make sense? Let me see what it does now. I have visuals again, but I don't see any post-processing happening. Interesting. So it doesn't do anything currently. Renderer. Why is it broken? Let me just step through it. Then wait. Let me first make sure that we have the correct renderer. Final renderer. Yes. Yeah. There you go. So we have 5 post-processing ones, right? And we have a source texture which should be 920 by 1080. Yes, that's correct. Swapped is false. So we have render texture, value, depth. Yes, it's also correct. First is true. Then we're going to apply. To texture is the ID 5, and this one is, let me figure it out. This is 4, and this is ID number 5, I think. Yes. So first it's going to work with number, it's going to render to number 5, which makes sense. So now, yes. So now the source texture should be number 5 to 4. But it isn't. Render texture. It's 5 to 4, which is correct. But and this one is going to ID 4, then to 5. Yeah, it should all be fine. 920 by 1080 should be fine. Then we have the final texture. I don't see anything really wrong with it, but could just be me. Why doesn't it apply it? Oh. Why? Why doesn't it work? Should apply it. Current renderer.texture.value, which is great. But it doesn't really apply it. Wait a minute. Final processing renderer. And if we are swapping it, wait. Yeah, because it's going to do the two texture, and then we're going to swap it, and then we picking up then we need to pick it from the from texture because we are swapping it here. Yes. Otherwise, it's not going to work indeed. Highly doubtful that it still doesn't, if it still works, but it works. That was the issue. You see it? We have post-processing back. Woohoo! With a nice CRT shader again. Nice. Ah, no, you don't want to know how happy I am that this part is now just cleaned up, because it was just such an, yeah, well, just a horrible mess in my in the library and all the other things. So now at least we can remove some stuff in here. If that makes sense. The get post processors. Yes, that's to fill in everything for related to the post processing. Then we need to have the final texture indeed. Do we really need to have the final texture? Yes, we do. Which is great. Oh man. I didn't suspect that it went this smoothly. I was expecting that I was just 2 hours just screaming to the mic and at a certain point just crying on the ground. But it seems that today it won't happen. Otherwise it will be a horrible drama of movie. All right. Oh yeah, that's right. That's the reason why it's crying about this part. This field can be viewed. Yeah, you're all right. Read only, read only. All right. So we went from 300 lines of code in this class to now 159. That's already a big improvement. But now comes the question. How we want to go further with this, because the next part is that let me just open up the visualizer again now, because now nothing is broken again. In here we have the renderer, which is actually quite funny because this visualizer is also running in my game engine. So the one downside is that when I am really stuck, then I cannot even start my own visualizer. Maybe I should just make a separate binary of it, so at least I can just start can open up my diagrams. Really didn't thought about that. So this was the old situation. So basically we go into the game host, renderer servers, then we go to the render strategy, and we basically are invoking two cameras. And what is the actual issue with this is that the primary issue with this is that we are just have no control when or how we want to start the render targets, right? So we really like to make sure that this part you have better control for it. But now comes the pain point is that in my how do you call it, the base game object, we have something that's called the camera layer. And normally it does make sense because you have the world and you have the UI. But this is not really giving enough control, in my opinion. I think it's better if you can just specify the render target here. And then you can just draw wherever you want. Which, in my opinion, will be a lot better. But the problem is that this specific base class is being used already around 53 places. So if I'm going to refactor this, that means that I need to go to each game object that is calling this specific object. And then I need to address this, or I can still keep this enum. And then we always have as default an UI camera and a normal camera. And then if you really want to have it in an other render target, then you can just then you can also assign it. I think that will be better because in most situations, especially for just simple 2D games or arcade games, you most of the time you only need to handle with two cameras. Just so, for example, here in Cybermaze again, or I can let's just start Snake. Why not? Does it also have music? No. Because, well, funny enough, this is I personally think this is a bad example because this one you can see it doesn't even have an the camera. I do see, by the way, I think we still have an issue with the post-processing that we still need to address because it looks like that the bloom system is not working correctly. Or does it? Does it work? Wait, now I am confused. Let me disable the CAT shader and let's see how the bloom is behaving. Because I must say that the CAT shader is removing a lot in that regard. Let's run. Do we have bloom? Well, we definitely have bloom. because I do see it glowing on the sides. Which is, by the way, also something that I still need to address, because there are some small issues with the bloom effect itself. Currently, it doesn't really look that great. Which is, by the way, let me see, base final processor. Yeah, something that I still need to address, but it's quite a complicated setup, because it's doing core processing items inside it. It's quite a complicated setup, but it does work. So there is not really an issue. Let me just see how this is currently flowing, because we do a begin renderer, then we have the final renderer, and that means that this render target will not do the post-processing anymore. Well, it will still do, but not in the same way anymore. We need to register for each of them just an one target, basically. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? Yes, that makes sense. Because the nice thing is that I do have a global in my global object manager, or my scene manager, or whatever. I can register it with a tag, and then we can at least work around it that way. Yeah. But yeah, no. Sorry, I'm just trying to think out loud with this. All right. Let's see. Should I able to do it in 28 minutes or 38 minutes? Should be doable. Should be doable. Personally, I don't think so, but definitely not. Because in here we have also the renderer itself. Then we're going to update the camera. We're going to start the begin renderer. Start world, start end world. Do a post-processing. Hit the UI. Yes. All right. Camera still makes sense, in my opinion, because we have the fixed size camera. That one is really simple. It only takes care of the camera itself. It is good enough. But that means that the rendered target strategy will have indeed the render width, the render height. And I still think that I can call it render target strategy. but it will also contain the camera. So in here we have the void camera. Does it make sense? No. Camera, eye camera, question mark, camera get set. It's optional. And also we need to specify the post-processing here. So we will have a list of post-processors. With post-processors. For this specific item. And then we have begin render, end renderer, and drawing. And then render it. That doesn't make sense. And then we have also an rect with the actual target towards the screen itself. Because the render target is something that is going to eventually render to the screen itself. Or not. Let me just check what will be the best plan. Renderer. Yes. And that's, yeah, like I already said, I'm a bit sleepy, so my mind is currently a bit off. So no, I really like to continue, but I think it's for me now smarter to wrap this up because I made now a nice compliment. A nice improvement that at least the post-processing one is now at least way cleaner. We have now just a nice central place where we do the post-processing with one specific logic. So I will call it for today. And I will stop a bit earlier. Sorry for that. But then for the next streams, I will be on. I will probably I will stream on Monday, Wednesday, and of course Friday. But then I will just continue working and making sure that we have the end goal achieved, right? To making sure that at least on my website here on downloads, we have something to download because now it's just a placeholder. So I will say thank you for watching, and I will see you the next time. Bye.